Welcome to In This Corner with Cyrus Fees. On this episode, this is a very special one for me because we are going to hit two guys that really made Access TV fights a really big deal. Two huge parts of that, and a huge part of the UFC, and a huge part of the IFL. They have a lot of things that they've done at the same time, and it's pretty exciting stuff. We got Pat Miletich and we have Bas Rutten on this broadcast. So I'm excited about that. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to have Bas a little bit later, but we're going to kick it off with this man. He's in Iowa right now. He is the 11-year MMA veteran, the first UFC Welterweight Champ, UFC Hall of Famer, founder of Miletich Fighting Systems, longtime broadcaster with Access TV, has the Conspiracy Farm podcast, and brand new The Final Round podcast with Ron Kruk, the Croatian sensation. Pat Miletich, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Cyrus, man. Thanks for having me on, buddy.
100%. Glad to have you here. I'm an Iowa guy, so as Iowans got to stick together. How are you handling this COVID-19 crisis there in Iowa?
You know, we're not completely locked down, but you know, it's bad enough. Of course, you know, it's the tragic loss of life is rough, you know, and prayers go out to those that have lost loved ones and everything. But you know, you know, my kids are staying active. One's a rower; she's going to college here next year on a scholarship for rowing. So she's got a rowing machine in the basement.
Nice.
She practices every day. She gets her practices. And my other daughter, though, is luckily we found an infinity pool. A friend has a infinity pool, so she can swim in that pool and get great workouts in. And she has been both have been working on their boxing skills with me also. And you know, I've been working out. But you know, ultimately, I think for people, what I would tell people is stop being afraid. You know, stop being afraid, and don't participate in what these government controllers are telling you have to do, man, because you can't allow fear-based conditioning to ruin your mindset. And it's really important for people to understand that. And we just interviewed a guy named Billy Carson, who is a MIT propulsion scientist. He has the forbidden knowledge.tv, number 4, and then bidden knowledge.tv.
Okay.
The most intelligent human beings I've ever talked to in the second time he's been on our show. And when you hear him talk, you'll understand why I say this. You know, and I just, you know, I had COVID-19 in January. My family had it. Most of my production crew had it. And, you know, I just got tested for antibodies. And so, look, again, if you're not elderly and don't have pre-existing conditions, you're going to be okay. You're going to cough. But tens of millions of people had this long before they even told us.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I have a wife that's in healthcare. She's a registered nurse. We're in Johnson City, Tennessee. We're we haven't been affected much at all, thankfully. We've had a few cases here and there. Tennessee has been pretty hot, but mostly in Nashville and Memphis and the real populated areas. That being said, you know, with her connection with healthcare, obviously she knows a lot of healthcare workers. We know some that have went up to New York and some in different areas as well. And, you know, like we talked about it, I think we can agree there's definitely a severity of for certain people with the underlying conditions. And right. But then there's those freak cases, and that's what always kind of gets into my head with this. And that's what kind of puts me in a certain bit of precaution, is there are those freak cases of, you know, those people that are generally healthy people, that it's just completely took their body for a whirlwind, and some of them unfortunately have lost their lives. And that's the stuff that stresses me out a little bit. Even though you don't want to live in fear, you do want to protect your loved ones, you do want to protect your kids. My son has asthma. There's little things like that. So I think I could see where people can be precautious, and I can also see why people want to get out and about and they want to go do their thing. So it's just one of those things that I think it hits everybody a different way, and there's not one good way to deal with it, if that makes any sense.
Right. Well, and you know, boy, you know, having a son that has asthma, yeah, you got to have real concerns for him, and that's important. And families that have to deal with those types of issues have to act accordingly. But again, you know, like for me, I have pre-existing condition. I grew up in a house it wasn't the best condition, and
Yeah.
the foundation leaked, and so every time it rained, there was 3 inches of water in the basement, and it was black mold, and my room was down there. So that's what I grew up in. So my lungs, were affected by that. So I would train twice as hard as everybody else just to get in good enough shape. I mean, I'd get up and run at midnight and go for 5 and 7 mile runs at midnight all the time just to get the extra conditioning in during my career. So it hit me hard. Both my lungs sounded like 2 bowls of soup, and somebody was putting a straw in it and blowing bubbles in it when I breathed.
Wow.
It was that severe. I'm just glad I didn't go to the hospital and get put on a respirator, because 80% of the people they're putting on them don't make it out of it. So I stayed home and wrote it out on the couch in the basement, and it didn't hit the rest of my family as well.
I'm interested in this because I had a feeling that with this interview, that because you feel so strongly about some of these things, that we may end up on this topic a little bit longer, but I'm okay with that because I want to pick your brain a little bit on it. I see a lot of distrust, and this is going to air next week, so this will be about right. I see a lot of distrust with the people that Trump has put in his small group there, right? With Anthony Fauci and with Birx, but specifically to Fauci. And I've seen a lot of distrust, but I kind of look at it, and I try not to be naive, but I want to believe that a guy that's been at that position for so long under so many presidents, that he doesn't have any sort of devious means or anything that he's trying to do deviously, even though he does work with Bill Gates, et cetera. What's your thoughts on that? Because I haven't listened to a lot of your podcasts. I do know that you talk a lot about things like this. What are your thoughts on Fauci and how people are taking him right now?
Well, you've got to look at Fauci's history. I mean, under the last administration, he was the guy that gave the green light to the Harvard professor that was just arrested for carrying biomaterial, Wuhan University and set up that laboratory there. And he and Chinese scientists got arrested for economics espionage, basically. And so, there was $3.5 million that funded that laboratory over there for that doctor to set up. So Fauci has his hands all over this, and I don't trust Fauci at all.
Okay.
What worries me is that Trump has surrounded himself with a lot of heavy hitters from Goldman Sachs, the people that are connected to the Blackstone Group, and a bunch of other people like that. And look, man, our politicians are enriching themselves and doing, and this is across the board. I'm talking Republican and Democrat, and that's why I say don't participate in what they're telling you have to do. That if they tell me I have to get a vaccine and my family has to get a vaccine, it's not happening. It's absolutely not happening. And so people have to research this stuff on their own. I mean, just the simple fact that whether it was lab created or not, and we already know there's 25 bioweapons labs that we run that encircle Eurasia that have the ability to create viruses that attack specific genes, specific DNA. And all the scientists have diplomatic immunity, which means they can carry anything they want and ship anything they want, and you can't search it. If that's not a problem, I don't know what is, and on top of that, go ahead.
What do you think? And my thought is when I hear about stuff like this, I have a lot of friends that, that ask those questions, and I certainly have no issue with that. What I can't quite grasp is what's the end game? Like, what do you think? What is the end game for a Fauci, or what is an end game, where you think there is some sort of conspiring there, and you got these scientists, and I agree. Some of it does sound, I mean, you tell me that straight, I agree. It sounds a little shady. What is the end game, though? What are they trying to do, do you think?
Well, basically, I mean, this is about control. This is all about control. This is if anybody's gone outside and looked up at the sky lately at night, on a clear night, and you notice, a string of 40 lights going across the sky, that's Skynet. That's complete canvassing of the globe, they can with that. They can really surveil all of us. In China, China was the proving ground for the social point system. You get in trouble for jaywalking, and suddenly you get enough points against got your social points score, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you can't get on planes. You can't use the subway. You can't use buses. I mean, they're literally doing that in China, and that's where this was perfected. And if people think I'm crazy, look into the amount of American companies, energy companies, cinemas, film companies, that are owned by Chinese corporations. The number of registered foreign agents within our government who are lobbyists for these Chinese companies. We're talking John Boehner, former Speaker of the House. And the list goes on. And these guys came from administrations, both Democrat and Republican. So, I mean, I was a hardcore Republican for a long time, and I'm not that way anymore. I'm not that way. I'm just, like Billy Carson said, and I urge people to listen to that episode.
Absolutely.
But people need to listen to him because he's super intelligent. And, when his words, I mean, for me, it was such an impact. And we've had him on twice, but this time he let us have it, man. And
do you think that there's anything wrong with the type of person, like, I just keep using myself because we're talking, but do you see anything wrong with somebody that, I guess my thing is that I don't really want to fall down that rabbit hole just because I don't want to believe that there's that amount of nastiness out there, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't want to believe that there really is this conspiracy to do this or to track us and do that. Even if it is happening, I feel like I can live my life and navigate my life without having to worry about that and think about that. And do you think there's something wrong with people like that? Or do you think we should all be kind of challenging the narrative a little bit?
Well, I think, by challenging the narrative, I don't mean go to politicians' houses and drag them out the street.
Sure.
But I will say that, for those of us, who think differently, just don't take part in their programs again. I'm just not participating. I'm just not participating. But there's a lot of people that don't, because you're such a kind-hearted person. I think because I was a professional fighter and I had to dissect my opponent and I had to think like my opponent, how he would beat me, I had to have sinister thoughts to become a professional fighter. And, it's not easy. Not everybody's hardwired enough to climb in a cage and go at it with another guy that's a world-class fighter.
Very few.
So I think that has led me to think like bad people do as far as trying to figure out what's coming next.
Sure.
And on our podcast, including a ton of research, we do hours and hours and hours of research. We talk to a ton of experts, high level experts, and very intelligent people who know what they're talking about in the subject matter that we might be covering in that episode. And I tell you what, again, it's not for everybody. It's absolutely not for everybody, and that's okay. But I want people to at least listen to the show, and if they doubt us, at least do your own research and try and prove us wrong, man. We've been correct. Our ratings, and I'm not bragging because I'm saying that people are finally going, wait a minute, we're waking up. These guys have been right for 5 years. We're higher rated on iTunes than CNN News Briefing, The Young Turks, Bloomberg Business Week, Laura Ingraham, The Mark Levine Show, The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, This Week with George Stephanopoulos, ABC Radio, State of the Union with Jake Tapper, Brian Kilmeade, Fox News. So people finally went, these guys are the ones that are telling us coming, and what's the truth. Now, again, not for everybody, because some people will process it and go, oh my God, and their head will blow up. But for us, we feel it's our duty to at least tell people, in our minds what.
Yeah. Well, you got a new listener in me, and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. I do a lot of driving right now, so definitely a lot of flying once these events start up again. That being said, let's talk about fighting. Let's veer off. Veer off of politics and veer off of conspiracy for a minute. I'm always interested in this, and I talked to Forrest Griffin about this, talking about the early goings of MMA and the early shows. And you were obviously a generation before Forrest. What was a typical show like? This is even before you got into the UFC. A typical MMA show like, and do you have a wild story of just a promoter or just anything that would just kind of would blow somebody's mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you a good story. Have you ever had Monte Cox on?
I have not met. I know Monte Cox. I think I've talked through email to Monte Cox about fighters, but I've never actually talked with. I don't think I've actually had a real conversation with him.
Okay, so uh, I believe it was Wisconsin, maybe Michigan, a show in Michigan. And back then, we'd drive an old U-Haul to a place from Monte. We'd set up the cage, we'd fight in it, tear it down, and then drive it back. And leave the truck at home. But he was doing a show up there. We've been up there a couple of days, setting things up, and he wasn't selling any tickets. He's like, dude, I'm not going to be able to pay you guys. Nobody's buying any tickets. And so Monty's a smart guy. He's a pretty intelligent guy. And so he pays some people around town some money to hold some signs up that say no human cockfighting. And so then he called the news and said, hey,
Yes.
there's like 20 people demonstrating and freaking out. And so the news covers it, puts it all over the news on all the stations up there. And the next thing you know, he sells the place out because everybody.
Yes. Now that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And there was another one. There was another one time he calls me up and he goes, man, he goes, I'm struggling. My main event fell apart on me and the building sold out down here in Ottumwa, Iowa. And I go, well, who's your main event? He goes, Clayton Miller, and I forget the other guy's name. And back then, when you were in the UFC, you could fight in other organizations. They didn't. So I said to Monty, I go, well, hell, I'll fight Clayton. And he goes, are you sure, man? It's in 2 days. And I go, yeah, I'll drive down, stay at my aunt's in Albia, Iowa, which is there. Help her around the house and do some stuff for her, paint her fence and whatever. And then I'll swing over and beat up Clayton and get some money. And he goes, you seriously, you do that? And I go, yeah, but here's the stipulation. I get half the gate. And so, he's at least getting 50% out of it, Sure. So he said, done deal, man. Let's do it. So I drove down there, fought Clayton Miller for 28 seconds or whatever it was. And I mean, there were 4,000 people there, something like that. So I got a really good payday, better than I got in the UFC. I'll tell you that.
That's also a great story. I love that, the grittiness of it. I love that part of the promotion. And, and I came up to, and I still do some smaller shows. I do a show called North Star Combat up in Minnesota. It's a smaller show, but we do some really cool things and we're on MediaCom. It's great, but I love that grittiness and getting those last minute opponents and figuring things out. That part of promoting is super gratifying and super exciting and just wild stuff. And I love hearing those stories. Miletich Fighting Systems. Now started in 97. You guys probably wrapped up 2010, 2011. Is that about right?
You know what? I never keep track of dates. I just haven't done that.
Sure.
So, I mean, for me, I got to the point where I had to retire from coaching because I was so busy doing broadcasting. I was working for Showtime Sports, ESPN, and Access TV at the time. And I had a law enforcement military training company and 2 new daughters, young daughters and stuff. And I just went, I can't do this anymore. And Brian Stan's the reason I finally pulled the trigger and retired because of a conversation he and I had.
Interesting.
In the back of the car service. We just did the last show of the year before the holidays started. And I was leaving for Florida with my family like we did every year to stay down there. And I was really stressing, man. I was stressing about the decision. It had been like 3 years where I was like, I got get out of coaching, man. I just can't do this anymore. I don't have the energy. And I talked to my daughters on the phone real quick, told them I loved them. I was looking forward to making them breakfast in the morning and said, I love you, and hung up. And he looked at me and he said, Pat, he goes, it caught me so off guard, but, it was almost like God speaking to me. He goes, Pat, I've killed a lot of people. He's a former Marine, Silver Star recipient,
Absolutely.
A legit human being, man. And he goes, I've killed a lot of people. And every time in the middle of firefights, I always wondered what life was all about. And he goes, and I finally came to the conclusion that the greatest thing a man could ever do is raise his kids the right way, get them off on the right foot. And at that moment, I was done. And I flew home and I called a meeting at the gym, told the fighters I was done. That was it.
Yep. Well, I mean, circling back to the Corona thing, it's allowing people to reconnect with their families. What an amazing thing that is. Just that whole concept. You get into this grind and you got, like yourself, you got all kinds of different irons in the fire. I do the same. And just being around them for 24 hours a day on a regular basis has been incredible, you know? So I would definitely agree with that. And it's been a wake up call, and you kind of see those things you're forgetting about, and those reasons why you go and work so hard. Now you actually get to enjoy it. So if there's ever a silver lining, there's one for sure.
Yeah. And people need to definitely, you know, hear what you just said. And I pray for the people that are in, you know, maybe a relationship with somebody who maybe is abusive and things like that. You know, pray for those people, and by all means, if you can, seek help and get the heck out of there. But you know, for those of us that, you know, are in a good home with loving people, yeah, it's a very positive thing.
No doubt about it. Guys, there's so many things I want to touch on. You know, the UFC, three-year title reign with that welterweight championship. And I didn't realize that until I did the research a little bit. And you were able to fight on other events. That's such a game changer. You know, I mean, from the UFC that everybody knows now, that would be ludicrous. Nobody would even think of such a thing. Do you miss that time and that freedom for fighters?
Yeah, I do actually, because it was kind of like the Wild West, and there was no big dog on the block yet, you know, or anything like that. The control, you know, of the contracts and stuff was not there. And you know, look, they couldn't keep us busy enough. There was, you know, 8 to 12 shows a year, and they had a roster. They couldn't get you on shows enough to pay your bills for the year. So they were like, "Yeah, man, go fight elsewhere." But you know that backfired on me a couple times. I lost to Jotaro Nakao, a great Japanese fighter, and Jose Pele Landi. You know, that time Dr. John Keating shot me up with xylocaine, 12 shots in my back. So I'd walk out to the cage to fight Pele, and after the first round, I was like, I can't walk, man. This is the stupid. But I needed the money, right? So anyway, and that's how we performed in the Jotaro Nakao thing in Hawaii. That was my third fight in one month. I did a UFC fight, then I did a pro boxing match, and then I fought Jotaro Nakao in Japan. And I was drinking beer on vacation with my wife because TJ Thompson, he set me up so bad. He said, he goes, I'll just get you a really easy opponent. Just come over, you know, we'll pay you pretty good and have a good time. So I was like, cool. All right. So I'm over there relaxing on the beach, drinking a beer, and come to find, I'm warming up, excuse me, I'm warming up in the locker room. And Frank Shamrock's in my locker room. And I go, Frank, do you know anything about this Jotaro Nakao? And he goes, are you kidding me, Pat? And I go, no, I've never even heard of the guy. And he goes, dude, he's the #1 guy in Shudo. He's an animal. Oh, no. God. So I took him down real easy a couple times, and I passed his guard, got mount. Excuse me. And he slapped a triangle on me, and I got out of it real fast, and I got mount again. And then he got back to half guard, and I'm like, yeah, no big deal. Yeah, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, bam, he slams a triangle on me again, and he set it up so well. I was so fast that I dreamt. And I think I was out for 2 seconds. I felt like I dreamt for like 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I dreamed that I was standing on the stairs inside of a house, and I was looking at a crowd at a house party. And there was a guy across the room turning up a stereo system on a live album, right? You know how a live album. And I came to, and I looked up, and it was the crowd I was hearing cheering because he had just choked me unconscious.
Oh my God.
It was so bizarre. It was so surreal.
You know, you've done a lot of broadcasting over the years. Everybody asks me, you know, I do play-by-play myself, and they always ask me, you know, who's the best play-by-play? I always tend to go with Chevello. I love Michael. There's something about what he does, and he's extremely technical. He knows his moves. He knows his setups. He knows all that. He always did good at setting you up and setting his color guy up. But his energy and what he does is just, for me, it was the total package. How was it working with Mike for so long? So many great shows.
Well, I mean, we became brothers, you know. We're both Freemasons. We travel, we go to lodges together, you know, and watch them do degree work and things like that. It was just an incredible experience. He's such an intelligent guy, and I've worked with a lot of really good people. But I agree with you. He's absolutely one of the best in the world at what he does. Truly, truly incredible guy. I'm glad to see him land, you know, such a big spot over there with ONE FC.
Absolutely.
I think they're taking care of him pretty well.
Yeah, no, and he gets to be closer to home, and I know that's key for him being in Australia. So very, very happy for Michael, and all the best to him. That being said,
it'll come back for me, Cyrus. I lost you for a second here. There you are. You're back.
There we go. Yeah. So, all the best to Michael, and he's going to continue to do great things. As far as broadcasting, Access TV Fights is no longer a thing, sadly. What an amazing run, incredible run. I was glad to be a part of it with XFC. It was my big launching point here in the States, so it was a big deal for me. That being said, it's gone now. Give me some memories, man. It's a lot of years you put in there.
It was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun. Daryl Ewald, who passed away a few years back, fortunately, one of the kindest guys in the world, and truly an intelligent guy. And that's something, we became a family. You know how it is when you're doing broadcasts and stuff. Everybody's here hanging out, you're eating dinner. We did so many shows. We did 45 shows a year, man. So you're with, 3 days out of the week, almost every week, you're with these guys. So they become your family on the road, of course.
Sure.
And so, in the 8 years I was there, I spent like 3 years of it, 3.5 years of it with those guys. And you just grow to love them. And Daryl was, he was our guard dog, man. I said, Daryl, I go, you don't necessarily even have to travel all this much and destroy your health. Why do you do it? And he said, look, that I've done my job already by hiring the people that know what they're doing and they're good at what they do. That's my job to do that. But my job is also to take care of the crew. If anyone messes with you at airports, anyone messes with you at the hotels. I had one time where the hotel accidentally charged my card for the room and it was like $1,000. My wife calls me and goes, you just buy a really expensive hooker or what? and I go, why? What are you talking about? And she goes, $1,000 on our card. And I go, whoa, okay, hold on. So I go down the front desk, tell the hotel lady, I go, hey man, you guys accidentally charged my card instead of the company card. And you need, because I have to put a card down for incidentals, right?
Sure.
And that for the room charges. And she goes, I can't help you. She goes, that's an accounting thing. And I go, well, where's the manager? The manager comes out, looks at me, goes, can't help you. So I call up Daryl, and Daryl comes downstairs. He asks her, and she starts to say the same thing to him, and he goes, get your manager. The manager comes out and starts to say the same thing, and he goes, let me tell you something. He goes, we work with Marriott all year long, and he rattles off this massive amount of money that they spend, that the network was spending with Marriott hotels, and he goes, get it off there now, or you're going to lose your job. The guy goes, yes, sir. 10 minutes, it was gone. It was gone off my card.
Too many good stories, man. This has been so much fun. Do you want to get back into the commentary game? I think you did something real recently, right? Did you not just
I work for UFC Fight Pass now and the Elephant.
Okay.
So we're doing that, and I'm excited about that. And again, doing my commentary or doing my podcast, our podcast has finally gotten to the point where we're starting to get really good checks from our sponsors. So that's I love doing that, and now I'm working with Ron.
You're with Ron, yeah. Ron's awesome. What a great talented guy.
Yeah. So he's very good, and so we're having a blast, and we're trying to stay busy as much as possible until we rev this machine back up, buddy.
Last thing, I've asked a lot of people about this. The Tiger King. Have you viewed the Tiger King?
I don't even participate in that stuff, brother.
Pat, come on, have fun.
No, I'm serious. You will rarely ever see me watching TV. The only time I watch TV is when I'll turn on Fox News, CNN, and those stations, only to get an idea of the narrative spin that they're trying to sell the American people on.
Sure.
Their stance on and I already know what their stance is going to be, but I watch it mostly for comedy, to be honest with you. I just laugh and go, I can't believe they're just trying to sell this. COVID-19 breaks out. The first thing they put on all the networks is a picture of a bat the size of a German Shepherd in a bowl of soup. And I go, you've got to be kidding me.
That is reality. That is a reality, unfortunately.
And imagine the people out there that went, oh my gosh, this is terrible. They eat
a lot of folks did.
That's how they got. And I went, Wow. Wow. So folks, do your own research, man, and live your life, and don't participate in their programs.
If I didn't ask you this last thing, I'd be remiss and I'd kick myself. How is Matt Hughes doing? Tragic what's happened to him. Obviously, he's done some recovery, and how's he doing? Do you guys stay in touch? How's
Yeah,
that?
you know, we contact each other now and then and talk, and I check in on him, and he checks in on me, and
Good.
I think he's doing pretty good overall. You know, he's working and keeping himself busy. So, you know, that's really important, especially, you know, for any guy that's taken the amount of abuse that we all have, you know, sitting around idly by yourself, you know, depression can set in for folks that maybe suffer from CTE issues or anxiety or any of that stuff. And so he's keeping himself busy. He's working hard, and that's really important. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, give my regards to your entire family. Continued success on all your ventures. I am going to be doing some downloading. I got to listen to some Conspiracy Farm. I need to get educated a little bit. I'm ready.
Listen to the one we just did with Billy Carson today. Start
Okay.
with that one, and because I had a very doom and gloom approach to a lot of stuff. Because look, when you research some of this stuff that we research, it takes its toll on us. It really does. And so I needed that interview today. I think anybody that's having any kind of anxiety or depression right now, listen to Billy's words today. It'll really impact you.
All right. Well, Pat, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
All right. See ya. That's Pat Miletich. On the other side, we got El Guapo Boss Rutan. Keep it right here in this corner.